In this story, we'll hear about a devoted husband who suddenly discovers a devastating secret that shatters everything he believed about his marriage. The time was just 8:45 a.m. earlier that morning. However, I kissed Marissa, my wife of 15 years, on the cheek and wished her a good day. She is a real estate agent, and based on her commissions and bonuses, she has been for the majority of our marriage. "You have a good day," she said in the fake realtor voice she liked to use, knowing that I detested it. To make matters worse, she looked at me with a small smirk. As usual, I went to the office at 7:45, set down my briefcase, and went to the men's room for coffee. But then it hit me, standing at the urinal. I felt like someone was running a blade through my penis, and I couldn't help but scream in agony. It was as if she had a secret that she was keeping from me. I was thinking about the work that was piling up on my desk, and that I had a number of reports to finish before the end of the month, which was in just a few weeks, before coming over. To check on me, he heard my scream, finished his business, and buttoned his pants. "What's wrong?" he asked worriedly. "It's me, Greg Watson. Feel like I'm on fire." We looked into the urinal and saw greenish discharge from my penis. "Okay," Greg Allen said. "Look, go get checked out. Let me know what the doctor says. Need to finish all these reports. Don't worry about them in the meantime," he said. "I'll take care of them. Please take a few days off and let me know that you have plenty of sick leave in reserve." "Thank you, boss. I apologized for that." Said, "Hey, life happens." In an attempt to lift my spirits, he gave me a wry smile. I washed my face and returned to the office where I picked up my briefcase. On the way out, I informed the receptionist that I might be gone for the next day or longer. I considered seeing my usual doctor, but his office was on the opposite side of town, and I wasn't sure I could see him today, so I chose to visit the ERG care center instead. A nurse finally called my name, Greg Watson, after taking samples from me and asking me to wait in the waiting room while they analyzed them. The young woman was staring at me like I was an insect, so I looked up and followed her, wondering why, and she pointed to the observation room. "Have a seat, Mr. Watson," she said in a very unfriendly tone, and I sat down and watched her sit. She started taking my vitals, blood pressure, temperature, and other information while she was looking at me. After writing everything down, she said, "The doctor will be here soon." A few minutes later, I heard a knock on the door, and an older man in a white coat came in. He saw me, came in with a folder, and sat down. "Mr. Watson, I'm Dr. Smith," he said. "Your preliminary test results have come back, and it appears you have a rather nasty case of gonorrhea garia." He looked at me like I was a fool and said, "I'm shocked that it's a sexually transmitted disease. Mr. Watson, I'll prescribe you an antibiotic and advise you to refrain from sexual activity for 7 days after treatment is finished. If symptoms continue after treatment, I recommend that you see your primary care physician." He continued by explaining that there were other tests being conducted at the moment and that I might not receive the results for a few weeks or longer. He then demanded a list of all the people I've been seeing recently. "I've only been sexually," I said. "I've only ever been intimate with one person in my life," and he gave me a sad look for a few seconds before focusing on my chart. "However, if I got it from her, wouldn't she also have symptoms?" He said even if she has symptoms, she should be examined as soon as possible. The longer she waits, the greater the risk of developing serious complications. "Excuse me, Mr. Watson." He handed me a packet of pills and made me sign some forms. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Watson." As I was going through the checkout process, I thought, and don't forget to consult your doctor before leaving. Great. I got in my car and called my boss to tell him, "I'm sorry to hear that Greg Allen said, don't worry, discretion is my middle name. You'll take a leave of absence and come back when you're cleared. I've already forwarded your reports, so don't worry about anything. Get well, thank you." So I ended the conversation. I dreaded making the next call, but I wasn't about to begin. I pressed my parents' speed dial button and heard my father answer the phone. "Hey son, how are you?" he asked. "Hey." "Are you at work?" "Hey Dad, I have a little problem and I need to have a little talk with you and Mom, if that's okay." "Are the kids okay?" he asked. "Look, I really don't want to talk about this over the phone. Come over and we can talk a cup of coffee." I put my phone away before leaving the house. I guess I should tell you that my sister Denise and I grew up in a very I dated and played around a little, but that was all I remembered of the day I told Marissa that she wanted to wait until we were married to have sex. She smiled widely and kissed me. Coming from a religious family, our home was a very happy home full of laughter and love. We had a very happy childhood, and our parents loved each other very much. However, we were raised with some pretty strict rules, one of which was about having sex outside of marriage, which was a big no in my parents' eyes. I had never felt so warm in my life, and she promised to rock my world on our wedding night. She didn't seem to mind my lack of experience, so I gladly let her teach me how to love her the way she liked. Her and she seemed to really enjoy it too. I knew she wasn't a virgin when we got married, but I didn't mind if she stayed faithful to me. After we were married, she started working at a big real estate office in town and attempted to get her. Approximately a year after our marriage, she gave birth to Lisa, the first of our 2 daughters. A year after Ginger was born, Marissa was having a very difficult time giving birth, so she had her tubes tied. She told me that 2 was enough for any couple, and I respected her decision. We continued living our lives, though I was hoping for a son naturally. Our 2 daughters became daddy's girls and quickly had me smitten. Marissa went back to work after her. When Dove's maternity leave ended, she threw herself into her work. I frequently found myself in the role of Mr. Mom, taking care of my girls while she was showing houses in the evenings or doing paperwork in the office. As the girls grew older, I began spending even more time with them, taking them to their extracurricular activities. When Marissa wasn't available, Lisa loved music and took piano and guitar lessons. While Ginger was more athletic and played softball, or as time passed, I noticed that Marissa was missing more and more, and it wasn't just in the evenings. She was frequently sent to seminars out of town, which kept her away on weekends, and the company's annual retreats kept her away for a whole week. She called me every night to check in and say hello to the girls, but it wasn't enough. In addition, she had this annoying fake personality that drove me crazy. I spoke with her about it several times, but she was obviously not going to give it up. I was at my parents' house and pulled into the driveway. Dad greeted me at the door with a big hug and a clap on the shoulder. The coffee had just run out, so he said, "Come on in and we'll sit talk." I walked into the dining room and gave my mom a hug before we sat down at the table. Mom poured us coffee, wondered if she was spending too much time at work. Even the girl began to notice the change in their mother. Added cream and butter peon to it. Dad followed suit, and we each took a sip. "Why don't we start with prayer?" she asked. Of course, I was used to it by now. They all did it that way. "Wrong, son. I just came from the urgent care clinic." "I have," Gareth said. "Oh my God," Dad said quietly. That was one of the things I admired about him. He could take just about anything as long as it was the truth. "Are you fooling around?" After a few awkward minutes, I told him that Marissa is the only woman I've ever dated. He nodded and said, "I believe you, son. Do you have any idea how long this has been going on?" Mom asked. "I don't see any other option but to divorce her over this." I said, "It's going to be hard on the girls," but she replied, "But they're old enough to understand." In addition, I said, "There's no way I can let it go, even if she says she won't do it anymore." Asked Dad. "Nothing. I just found out this morning that it's happening with this." I said, "I hate that it's happening, but I don't see any other way out." He said, "Hold on a second," and I looked at my mom, who was devastated by the situation. "I'm so sorry this happened, Greg," she said. "I always thought Marissa was a wonderful girl." "Me too, Mom." I said, "I think she fooled us all." Time, Dad had returned with his Rolodex. He went through the cards until he located the person he was searching for and pulled it out in triumph. He said, "You know Gina Hawkins? Yeah, she goes to our church, right?" I said, "Yeah, she's a family law attorney. Let me give her a call," he said. I wasn't surprised that he had her card because one of the deacons at church Dad had a bunch of cards that parishioners gave him. As I watched, he called Gina's office, and I could hear him speaking to the receptionist, who I realized was her secretary. "I owe you a lot, Gina. Of course. Take care of yourself, and give your little one a big hug for us. Bye." He hung up the phone and looked at me, saying, "Yes, it's Dan Watson from the church. We're fine here. Thank you, and your good listen. Was wondering if you could look after my son sometime soon." He's a little problem, and I think you might be able to help him really this afternoon. 12:30? That's great. I'll make sure he gets there. Dad said, "You know, you're going to have to tell Marissa about the STD. She'll have to get tested too before she spreads it even further than she already has." "Maybe the girls should stay with us for a while," Mom said, "because the house will probably get a little uncomfortable with all this going on. You need to bring your financials and tax returns for the last 2 years," he said. And I said, "Well, I guess I'd better head inside to pack my things." Talked for a few more minutes before I got up to leave, and Dad hugged me at the door. He said, "Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want revenge on Marissa, and I don't blame you for that. But remember Romans 12:19, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.' You got it. I don't want to have bail you out of jail because you've got 2 girls to think about. Slow down, look son. Why don't you bring the girls after they get home from school? We'll make sure they get there on time." Dad was right about one thing. I wanted retribution against Marissa and her lover or lovers. I had loved her exclusively for more than 15 years, so I was more than upset that this was how she had paid me back. I smiled. "No problem," Dad told him, got back in the car, and drove home. I began searching through my files for old tax returns. I also had to search through Marissa's belongings to find her returns. About 8 years ago, she had stated that she wanted to file separate returns, saying that doing so would prevent us from having to pay additional taxes. I accepted her suggestion and didn't give it any further thought. However, when I received her tax returns, I discovered the true reason she wanted to file separately. She had received far more bonuses and commissions than I had anticipated. Upon further investigation, I discovered a folder of bank statements, which I discovered were from a bank we did use. Examining the most recent statement, I discovered that she had saved nearly $1 million over. I took the statements and her tax forms and folded them into my folder. I got into my car and was about to get out when my phone beeped, telling me that I had a text message from Marissa, telling me that she had a late show and shouldn't wait for dinner. Yes, I thought no problem, so I wrote back, "I'll see you when you get home." I wondered if this was her exit strategy, or if she was planning to leave after the kids left for college. She had noticed that I hadn't told her I loved her, so I parked my car and went to Gina's office building. When I arrived, I was met by a pretty blonde receptionist. I said, "I'm here to see Gina Hawkins," and she looked at her computer for a moment before grinning and guiding me into Gina's office. Gina got up and we shook hands. "It's good to see you, Greg," she said, smiling. "Would you like some coffee?" Gina looked at the Gina, said, "I'm sorry to hear that. I thought you two were the real deal." The receptionist asked Gina if she could bring 2 cups, some butter, and some nuts. "Sure," Gina replied and left. A few minutes later, Gina returned with 2 cups and several small cap capsules filled with butter. Gina motioned for me to sit down, and I did. "I was shocked to hear from your father this morning," Gina said. "So you have a problem that requires my help?" "Yeah, looks like Marissa's cheating on me," Gina said. "I understand how you feel." I told her about our marriage ending. With the trip to the clinic this morning and the bank statements I found today, in this state, divorce isn't about justice. It's about money. Specifically how much of it you have and how much your wife's lawyer can get from you. Although this is a no-fault state, you can file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but you have to have very strong evidence. What about the STD she gave me? As for the money she set aside, her lawyer could easily argue that it was intended as a retirement surprise, but you don't believe that for a minute, do you? I asked. "No, I don't. It looks like an exit strategy to me. She's obviously waiting for the right time to make her move. I'm guessing she's waiting for the girls to tell her that." I agree. It sounds very convincing. But her lawyer could easily argue that you got it from another woman, Gina said. "You and I know that's not true. But that doesn't matter. What matters. It will be difficult to prove this in court, so I'm just unlucky." "Is that what you're saying?" "No, not at all," she said. "I have a private detective, and I can get him on the case as early as this afternoon if you'd like. If she's playing, we'll catch her. You want to go that route? I know it could be quite expensive, but at least you'll have evidence we can use in court. Okay, do it." When she lost her cell phone a few months ago, I pulled out my phone and installed a phone finder app. I opened the app and conducted a search, and it showed that her phone was at a house on the north side of town. Gina wrote down the address, so I said, "Okay, let me contact my private investigator," she said, picking up the phone while I waited. She spoke to her private investigator, sending him an email with the information I had given her as the conversation, and said, "Okay, we're all set. If anything goes on, we'll know soon enough. Now, let's get down to business. I know you have 2 teenage daughters, right? Lisa and Ginger are both 14 and 13 years old. They aren't yet old enough to choose which parent they want to live with, but they are getting close. Do you want to seek custody?" I told her that it might take some time, but we can try to find out who is the primary custodian, she replied. "Yes, since Marissa typically goes to court. My name is on the birth certificates. I'm the one who raised them, changed their diapers, and paid for their care." "I understand you," she said, "but it would still be nice to know for sure. In any case, I'll give you the name and address of a lab where you can get test kits, and they usually make them pretty quickly." I further asked, "What about your house? Are you buying or renting?" It belonged to my grandparents, and after they passed away, it was placed in a family trust in my parents' name. Consequently, they allowed us to live there, so I won't have to worry about the mortgage. She said, "I'm sure there are things in the house that will need to be divided, but generally joint assets like bank accounts and stuff are divided. 50/50ths. I'll give you a list of what needs to be done when we're done, okay? Is there anything else?" I asked, "Not now? Any case, do you think I should go see her in person?" I asked. "That's probably not a bad idea. At least let her know she needs to get tested for STDs. That way you won't be liable in case she spreads the infection further. Make sense?" She completed the paperwork and gave me a checklist and a card with the lab's name on it. "Anything else?" I asked. "Go ahead and deal with it," and she said, "We'll let you know if and when we get information from the investigator regarding the fee." I left, wrote a prepayment check, and headed for the lab after getting the kit. I went to the bank and looked over most of what Gina had written, and then I headed home. This is probably where most guys would have sat down and gotten drunk off their asses, agonizing over what happens in a situation like this and why. But I didn't know it hurt. I'd never felt such a thing. "Greg, yes, don't do anything stupid. We'll get through this. It won't be fun, but it will get better." My 2 angels usually came home around this time after getting a ride on the bus, but they usually didn't see me when they got home. "Daddy? You're home?" Lisa asked. "Are you okay?" "Yes. Daddy, why are you home so early?" I asked Ginger. "It's been a pretty hectic day. I don't drink, and I never have. That was another rule I grew up with my parents. I also never drank, and I didn't make coffee. So I sat down at the table with a cup when it was ready, but I didn't have time to think about it. I said, "Look, why don't you 2 go up and pack enough stuff to last you to a couple days? You'll be staying with your grandparents for a while." Why did Daddy ask Ginger what was going on? Was there a fight between you 2? No, there wasn't a fight between you and your mom, but I'm afraid that might happen later. I told them you caught her cheating. Didn't you ask Lisa? I looked at her in shock. What did she know? What made you think that? I asked her. She lowered her eyes in embarrassment. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I know how much you detest gossip." She said, "It's okay," I said, hugging her, "and she's been acting pretty strange lately." Lisa said I couldn't make it out a couple times, but she was speaking in her fake voice. You know, the one she uses to irritate you, and she said things like, "I can't wait to see you again, love." As I said, I couldn't hear everything. She giggled. Like a little girl, but it didn't sound like a professional call at all. Have time or desire to talk to us? Do you feel the same way? I asked, looking at Ginger, and she nodded her head. "You 2 can bother me whenever you want," she said, adding, "but first I need to swab both of your cheeks." I opened the test kit and said, "Yes, my lawyer should take a DNA test." "You don't think we're really your children?" I said to Lisa. "But she wants to make sure, so you're getting a divorce," I said. She asked Ginger if she could forget what she had done, and I doubted it, so I told her that she had given me a small gift. I had to see a doctor this morning, and Lisa almost uttered the 4-letter word, sorry, but she said it awkwardly. "It's okay, sweetheart. I've had more than one urge to curse today," I told her. "Now, let me take some samples from you." I took a swab and wiped the inside of Lisa's cheek, and then did the same with Ginger. Once their samples were in the kit, I took a sample from my cheek and placed it in a separate container. So I drove the car. Lisa asked, "If you get divorced, can I stay with you?" I said, "Yeah, me too," Ginger added. "I hope so. You to go upstairs and get enough to last you for a couple nights, and we need to be here in 15 minutes. And don't forget your homework." They went to their rooms and started packing up while I assembled the experiment kit. My plan was to take the kids their grandparents and then take the kit back to the lab toddy. She was saying, "I understand how you feel, sweetheart. Just remember, no matter what happens, I'll always love you and always be there for you. I love you too, Daddy." Lisa said, "I don't want to stay with her right now because I hate her for what she did to us." I thought about telling her not to hate her mother, but I decided against it. Her tears made me even more angry at Marissa than before, and I vowed, "To make her pay for this vengeance is mine, and I will repay," she said. When we finally arrived at my parents' house, I pulled into the driveway, turned to face them, gave them hugs and kisses, and promised to call them later, after the kids got out of the car. We all went to the porch where my dad was waiting for us. The girls hugged him and carried their belongings inside, so I gave him a hug. Mom then came over to say hello. I'd better get to the lab before it's too late. I asked Dad if he was okay, and he replied, "I'm fine as far as I can be under the circumstances. We'll pray for you, and we'll let you know how things went." "Went with Marissa," said. "I will, but I'm not sure when that will be." I told him it was okay, and Han Mom said, "You can call any time, thank you." I told her before I hugged her, so I better get back to my car and head to the lab. I arrived there 30 minutes before closing time, and I gave the receptionist my analysis kit. I asked, "How soon will I get the results?" And she smiled. "Great, thanks," I said. Got out and made my way home, stopping along the way to call Loretta. Marissa's older. I put in my Bluetooth earpiece and hit speed dial on my phone, and she answered after the second ring. "Hey Greg, how's my favorite brother-in-law doing?" she asked. "I've had better. Have you got a question for you, if you have a minute?" she asked. "Have you talked to Marissa lately?" "No, not since we were at your place last month." "Everything." "Okay, no, it's not." She listened quietly as I laid out the Reader Digest version of what was happening. "And my God," she said. "She was pretty wild when she was younger, and she cheated on almost every guy she dated. She was like that for the majority of high school and college. After she met you, she calmed down, and I assumed she was over it all. She told me she had found her soulmate and would no longer play the field, so I didn't say anything to you. Sorry, I probably should have told you no, it's okay. I understand you planned to kick her out tonight, and I wanted to see if she..." I heard her sigh over the phone and thought, "If that's okay with you, I think she might stay here for a while, at least until she gets a grip on herself." She said, "Frank won't be too happy about it, though I don't want it to cause you problems." I told her it's okay. He'll deal with her as long as she doesn't stay here too long. "Thank you. I don't know when she'll be home tonight, but I'll call you when she departs," she said. "I'm trying," and I replied, "Well, I should get going still." "Have to make dinner?" "Okay, I will." Before we ended the conversation, I got home and decided to reheat some leftover meatloaf for dinner. I had just finished watching the evening news when my phone rang, and I saw that it was a call from Gina. I answered. "Hello, Greg," she said, and then I checked my watch to see that it was just over half an hour later. 6:30, hey, I said I was. "Working late tonight for you?" She replied, "I just got some preliminary information from a private investigator. It seems your wife was a very busy girl. She's been with 3 men since 1 o'clock this afternoon. Wow, when does she even have time to work, really? Anyway, I'm forwarding the information to your email, photos, video, and a summary of the report. I'd recommend you don't watch the video, but you should listen to the last few minutes. Pretty enlightening stuff." When we were done talking, I turned on my laptop and checked my email. I opened the video and turned it up to the point Gina had mentioned in her email. I had no desire to watch the video of her having sex, but I was curious to hear what she had to say. "I see you're married," he said, pointing to her rings. "I noticed you're married too," she added, looking at her rings. "You now have enough evidence for a divorce." "Oh yeah," she said. "Call me when you're done listening to the audio recording," his ring said. "Yes, my wife and I have an open marriage." And he added, "But it's not an open marriage like yours, but I allow liberties when they arise." She said, "So your husband doesn't know?" he asked. "No, he doesn't." And she replied, "Has idea what kind of he's married to now?" I assumed the lie. I wondered, "What's the matter?" he asked. "He had better, because I have taught him everything he knows." She added, "You taught him?" the man asked. "You taught him?" She told him that he was a virgin when you got married. Imagine a 23-year-old virgin who is a religious freak, doesn't smoke, drinks, or swears. I've told him that he didn't even know how to have sex until we were married. He would probably go into a rage. The man said, "Sounds like a loser, so why do you stay with him?" "Love, in a way. So at least a little bit. Heck is a good father to my girls, takes good care of them, and doesn't fuss when I get home late. Other than that, Hyun is a complete bore." She said, "The girls are mine." At that point, I had to suppress a gagging fit because it made me sick. To think that she had been doing this to me the entire time we were married. She said, "Hell, I've been having fun my whole married life, and he still didn't get it. No, he has idea. He's never been with another woman, so he won't even know the difference. Honestly, I don't care, he thinks they're his," she said. "Have you been fiddling with him?" he replied. "Yes, for the time being, at least until the girls graduate high school and head off to college." She added, "That's about 4 or 5 years from now, and I'll have everything ready to run away by then." He asked, "Why wait?" "Because the courts typically award custody to the mother, and the last thing I want to do is end up holding 2 teenage girls." She asked, "What do you plan to do after this?" "I plan to celebrate, maybe have fun with a few people at once. Maybe I'll go on a cruise or retire to Costa Rica." "Do you think you can get away for the weekend with a couple guys?" he asked. "Yes," and she replied, "I can tell Greg that I have a mandatory weekend seminar or something, and he'll believe anything I tell him. Let me know when you can get out, and we'll set it up. You have my number?" "I will," she said with a smile. He looked at his watch. "It's getting late, and it's time for me to leave. I look forward to seeing you again, sweetie. I'm looking forward to it myself. It's to the empty room. You have no idea what's in store for you." I wiped away the tears that were now streaming down my face and said, "You're right. It was enlightening." "How do you want me to proceed?" she asked. "Burn it to the ground," I said. "Firmly consider it done." "What about all those guys she was with?" I asked. "Can we go after them too?" "No, I'm afraid not," she said in a low voice aloud. "In this state, don't worry about it. I have a feeling that things won't go well for them when their wives catch Goria. Venge is mine. I will repay, says the Lord." Dina laughed at that, and I said, "Well, I have to go." She said, "I'll prepare the papers and hand her in this week. She wants to run away, but it won't be the way she wanted it." "Thank you, Gina. I owe you one," she said. "I'd love to just take good care of your girls." Couch tears streaming down my face. It hurt to think that I had given Marissa the 15 best years of my life. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, and it was Marissa calling. I said, "Hello, Greg." And she said, "Are you okay?" "That doesn't sound good. It's been a bad day." I said, "What's going on?" "I'm finishing up work. I think made another sale." And she said, "Okay," said in a neutral tone. "I'll be leaving soon, so I'll be home in 30 minutes. And of course, I told her. I also said, I wondered if she noticed that I hadn't told her loved, but I decided that I didn't care if she did. I printed out the 4 pictures, put them all on one sheet of paper, and put them in a bag. I planned to meet her tonight when she got home. I put everything I owned on the kitchen table, made a cup of coffee, and sat down to wait for Marissa to come home. An hour later, she hadn't arrived, but I assumed she was lingering somewhere, so I continued to wait for her. 2 hours later, she still hadn't arrived, and I was beginning to worry. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message and texted her, but she didn't respond. 3 hours later, when nothing had changed, I began to wonder if she had been in an accident. Almost 3.5 hours later, I received a call on my home phone. I answered, hoping it was Greg Watson, but it wasn't him. I said, "Mr. Watson, this is Angela Barnes from Mercy Hospital. Were you related to Marissa Watson? She's my wife." She said, "Really not for long." I said, "Mr. Watson, your wife was in an accident and has been brought here for treatment. Can you come as soon as possible? Is she okay?" "I'm sorry, sir. I can't give you that information. Angela said her doctor would like to speak with you when you get here. Just ask to be called the courtesy desk, and they'll take care of you. Thank you." She ended the conversation, and I wondered what had happened. I put the paper with pictures in an envelope and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I considered calling her father or Loretta, but I decided to wait until I had more information. Got in the car and drove to the hospital. As I got to the courtesy desk, I introduced myself to the middle-aged woman behind the counter, gave her my wife's name as a patient, and she looked at the other woman next to me. "Will you please escort Mr. Watson to the ICU?" she asked, looking at me. She then went around the counter and motioned for me to follow her, which I did. And we went upstairs to the ICU, was greeted by a uniformed police officer named Mr. Watson. He asked if I was him. I said that I was Officer Simpson, the person who had responded to the report of your wife's accident. He asked me what was wrong. I explained that she was driving through the intersection of 3rd and Main when she was struck by a truck. The other driver was intoxicated, ran a red light, and struck her car on the driver's side. I apologized profusely, and he said it was all right. I replied that her car was taken to the junkyard and that there wasn't much left of it. He handed me a business card from the tow truck company. When he left, I said, "Thank you, officer," and took his card. A man in a white medical coat came up to me and said, "Yeah, I'm Dr. Blake, the doctor in charge of your wife's treatment. Can we talk for a moment, please?" He led me into a small room, closed the door, and sat down in a chair in front of a small round table. I sat in the chair across from him and asked how my wife was doing. I replied that she had multiple broken bones and numerous internal injuries, and that she had also been severely hit in the head. We've placed her in a medically induced coma to aid in her recovery, but there's more. Did you know that your wife has giardia? I found out this morning. I said, "I assume you're receiving treatment for that?" He replied, "Yes," and I replied, "Good, but that's not all. Our preliminary tests suggest that she might be HIV positive, and we've sent her blood for a complete blood test, but the results won't be available for a few days or weeks. Have you been tested for HIV? I don't know if anyone told me that they took blood when I visited urgent care this morning, but I'm not sure if they checked. I advise you to see your primary care physician as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be a good time. If either or both of you test positive, you should talk to your doctor about this in general." He said that it depends on her and that it could take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on how quickly she heals. He also said that she could be here for a while after that. When I asked if I could see her, he replied that she could really, I smiled to myself, use your support right now. He got up and opened the door, saying, "She's in room 5 over there." He pointed to her door and I said, "Thank you, doctor," shaking his hand. I entered her room and saw that she was bandaged and had a cast covering one leg all the way up to her hip. Her face was black and blue, and several cuts had been stitched up. She appeared to have been in a war zone. I said a prayer for her, then took out the envelope containing the pictures and wrote her name on the front. Then I put my ring inside and sealed the envelope. I looked at nurse, who was taking care of her. "Could you make sure she gets this when wakes up?" I asked, of course. The nurse said, "Go put it on the tray over there," she added, pointing to an empty wheeled tray. "Thank you," I said, placing it on the tray so Marissa could see it. I took one last look at the woman on bed. As much as I hated what she had done, didn't want to see her like this, seeing that she was still wearing her rings. I took them off and put in my pocket. "Goodbye, Marissa," I said quietly. "I'll see you later." The nurse looked at me cheerfully as I left the room. I called Loretta on the way home from the hospital to bring her up speed. She was shocked when I told her what had happened and what the doctor had told me. "Greg, you know Frank won't let her stay here. If she's HIV positive," she said, "I know it will be safe, but he won't want her around. The kids, I can't go against him on this issue. Her parents retired a few years ago to move to Florida. So that was out of the question then. I guess I'll have to find her an apartment." He said, "I think it's for the best." She said, "I'm sorry, Greg, but I'm not going to put her above my family. She made her bed. Let her lie in it. I don't care when you find something. I'll help you move her stuff, but then I'll wash my hands of it, I understand." I said, "Don't blame you. It's getting late in time for bed, but keep me posted, Greg," she said. I told her thanks. It was almost midnight when I got home. I was exhausted, so undressed and collapsed into bed, falling asleep almost as soon as my head hit the pillow after waking up the next morning. I called doctor's office to make a same-day appointment. I was a little surprised when they told me I had an appointment available for later that morning. I then called my parents and told them what had happened. They were shocked to hear about the accident and that she might be HIV positive, but said they would take the girl to hospital if they wanted to see her. I also told them about the evidence that had been handed to me Dad asked forward them to his email. Address, it's really bad, I told him all. Right, son, he said. I'm a big boy now. After I forwarded the letter, called Gina to tell her the news. She was shocked too, but said it would give her time to finalize the divorce papers. I then called Marissa's office to inform them of her accident. They expressed their condolences to me and promised to stop by see her. The next 2 weeks were hectic. I managed to find a 2-bedroom ground floor apartment with an attached garage. I put down a deposit and paid 2 months' rent in advance, all from Marissa's half of the bill. The girls and Loretta arrived, helped pack up all of Marissa's things, including our wedding album, and we drove them to the apartment. I also got report from the DNA lab and was happy to know that both girls were indeed mine. I couldn't help but smile at that. I met with the insurance adjuster and he inspected Marissa's car. I couldn't help but wonder how she had managed to survive the accident. Insurance agent said the same thing. Car ended up being in an accident. Since the car and the insurance policy were in her name, she would get a check. I got her stuff out of the car and took it to her apartment. Did you stop by Marissa's? My mom asked a week after the accident. No, I haven't said, at least not since that. First day, why? I was just wondering. She said she's made it clear that she doesn't care about any of us, and she wants to run away. I'm giving her what she wants, just not on her schedule. I said 2 weeks after that fateful Monday, I went to the doctor. I was rid of the gonorrhea Marissa had given me, but the doctor was still waiting to see if she had infected me with something worse. The pain in my groin was almost gone, but the emotional pain I felt in my heart would take a long time to heal. I called Alan and told him I would be back to work the next day, which made him very happy that same day. I received a call from the hospital informing me that Marissa had finally woken up from her induced coma. The nurse who called said that they were taking tests and examining her and suggested that I come to see her late that night suited me. Just fine. I called Gina and told her the news. Said the hardest part is trying to handle everything alone, she says. I can understand that. Said we grabbed coffee and sat at a table talking about the difficulties of single parenthood. When I decided to step up, look, Rhonda, I'm totally new to this whole dating thing, but would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Maybe this Friday, I asked. She thought for a moment, smiled and nodded her head yes. Greg, I'd like that. She said, what do you mean I don't know? Said I'd like to try the new Texas Roadhouse restaurant. Do you like it? I'd have a steak. She said, sure. That sounds tempting. Maybe we can go to a movie or something later. Great, I said. I can pick you up at 6:30. If that's okay with you, that sounds wonderful, she said. In fact, you can bring the girls and they can stay with Linda if that's okay. They had known each other for a long time and were already friends, so I thought it would be a good idea. Sounds good to me, I said. The girls were excited about my date with Rhonda, and they liked the idea of spending evening with Linda, so it was all set that Friday I invited the girls over and we went out to dinner. Rhonda looked really cute in her denim skirt, and we had a great time. We didn't have sex that night, but she gave me a hot kiss. When I stopped in front of her house, I noticed 3 sets of eyes watching us from the window of her house, and I saw them giving each other high fives. That was the best night I've had in months, Rhonda said as I hugged her. Same thing, I said. What if we do it again sometime soon? She said, maybe we'll send the girls to a movie and we'll stay home play. She added, running her hand down my leg. I felt a familiar thrill. I think you're onto something, said running my hand down her smooth leg. The girls were excited about our date, and I had to admit that was feeling pretty good about it too and enjoying the time with Rhonda. I'm not sure anything long-term will come of this, but I'm willing to take the risk. What would you do if you found out your partner had been lying to you for years? Have you ever had to start over after a betrayal? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. It really means a lot.